I want to welcome everybody to the Reincarnation Book Club. We are excited today to have Bryn Blankenship, and let me tell you just a little bit about her. Second generation hypnotherapist. I can't wait till we can say that more and more. I just feel like this is an up and coming field, and it's evolving as we speak, which I'm writing about. Anyway, Bryn was with the Michael Newton Institute, was on the board, vice president, director of membership, and she has been in many of the documentaries connected with them and Reincarnation. And she's also the founder of the Hypnotic Solutions Hypnosis Center. That's a mouthful.
We now go by the Hypno-Regression Institute.
Yes, I like that, Hypno-Regression. And and tell me how to pronounce Braithe.
Braithe.
Say it again. Braithe.
Braithe. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
it's Gaelic for standing in your truth, screaming out in pain, and just like finding your center, but finding your power. You know, because sometimes in session, clients let out energy.
Yes, I have been there, done that. And so we are so happy to have you here, Bryn, and to talk about your book. And as you can probably see, I've got lots of Post-its and notes about it. And I have a few things that it's like, I haven't heard that before. I have questions about that. The Limitless Soul, I love that title. Hypno-Regression Case Studies into Past, Present, and Future Lives. More and more, we're getting to be able to get glimpses of the future, I find. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. And I would like to ask you, besides being second generation hypnotherapist, you didn't have to go into the family business. What was it that inspired you to do that?
So I'm going to clarify that. Okay, so my father, let me just say, I resisted my parents and then still ended up doing the hypnosis, right? So my father had studied hypnosis, and he used to use these positive affirmations with us all the time. And he really focused on self-hypnosis. And he didn't have a practice the way I do. So he did this on the side, but he practiced one of the kids at the dinner table or the breakfast table. And it's like, okay, Daddy, I get it. But it sunk in. And so I didn't take a straight path to get to this place that I'm at. And do you want me to go into any of that, Carol? Like
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So
we love the backstory.
From the time I was born, I believed in reincarnation. We were raised Methodist. And I would be like 4 years old at the church with my parents. And this, I was old enough, if I was quiet, I could sit in church. So I would listen to the preacher, and I would want to know what he's talking about. And he talked about life everlasting. So when we came out of church, he would look down at me and say, well, what did you think about the sermon, little lady? And I would ask him, if we came from somewhere, if we have life everlasting, where do we come from? And my mother looked like she wanted to die. And I noticed that this preacher, who's supposed to know everything, didn't know. He couldn't answer me, and he would kind of fumble. And so it wasn't until many, many years later that I'm doing this work that I realized I'm answering the questions that I had as a 3 and a 4-year-old from as long as I can remember. And then I took the traditional path, and I went to college and got a good job as a legal assistant. And I really wanted to be an actress. So I was studying that and working with a coach from LA that would come. I grew up in Richmond, and then moved over, and this coach would come into town and work with us once a month. So I'm doing that, and I noticed that I had these blocks. I had these blocks to where I would know what I was going to talk about and what I was supposed to do. And you put the camera on me and I would think about it. And that is like death to an actress. When you think about it, it shows on your face and it's like deer in the headlights. So I went to a hypnotherapist because I was determined to clear whatever I was sure it was past life. And I was going to clear whatever this past life thing was that was blocking me. And I read Shirley MacLaine, Dancing in the Light, and I read some of her stories. So, and Shirley MacLaine's from Richmond. We had the same ballet teacher. When my book came out, I ended up being featured in her newsletter, like Small World. Now, she had that teacher when that teacher was much younger than I had the teacher. But we were a few years apart. But, I just never thought of all those connections until much later in life. And I'm thinking about past life regression. So in this session with the hypnotherapist, she's taking me into a past life and I go into a future life, a future scene actually in current life. And I am standing, it's like a metaphor in the session. That's what I thought it was. I'm standing in a field. There are apple trees. There's this tall prairie grass. And I'm just walking through the field, having my pick of acting gigs. So I'm sure that I'm moving past the deer in the headlights from auditioning. I'm sure I'm moving past that because that's what's happening in the scene. So I come out of the set. Oh, and towards the end of the session, there was some talk about New York, about California. And I said, oh no, I'm going to New York. I've already been up there. I travel up and down the East Coast to audition, and I'm literally going to move up there. And I've worked it out. So I came home from the session, and a few days later, my friend from LA, she had already moved out there, and I hadn't seen her in 5 years. And it's not like we talked all the time, but she said, Bryn, I was thinking about you, and you need to come out here. And if you come, you can stay at my place, my apartment, but I have a roommate and, you can only stay for 3 weeks. So I got everything lined up. I'm all ready to go. My husband's good with it. He's going to stay behind with the house. We're not going to sell everything and move out there. He's like, you just go and do what you need. And fear set in. I mean, fear to the point where I wasn't going to go. I was paralyzed and I had everything lined up. So my husband, the massage therapist, the wise one, he comes home from work one day and he goes, I want to talk to you. And I said, okay. And he said, there's no reason for you not to go. And nobody expects you to have any success. Like, what? I've never heard that before, because everything I've ever done in life, you do to succeed at it, or at least try. He goes, just go out there, do the best you can, and then see what happens. And I'm not a see what happens kind of person. I want to know that what I'm doing is going to have results. And then he said, and if you don't go, I'm going to leave you because you're going to resent me. So you think about that and think about what you truly want to do, because you've wanted this for a long time. And then he said, he looked at his watch and he goes, oh, I have to get back to work. I'll see you later. So I'm sitting there with all of this. And I went and packed my suitcase, put my headshots in my little my little Honda Civic, and got ready to go. And he had said, I'm not going with you. You have to take this journey by yourself. So I went out there. I knew about an acting class. It was right down the road from my friend's apartment. And I'm in the acting class. Someone in class saw me, told their agent. She called me in, hired me on the spot. And then I'm auditioning 4 times a day, 5 days a week. Like, I went from 2 auditions a month, and you're grateful to have those, and you drive to Tennessee or Florida or New York or wherever you have to go, to 4 a day, 3 minimum. And they kept calling me back. And a lot of these were commercials, but some of them were TV shows that they were filming here. So we used to laugh. Wouldn't that be funny if you got on a show in Wilmington that you've auditioned for? But I learned a lot about the tiers and how, the tiers that they were auditioning for here were none of the even secondary, 3rd or 4th tier roles. that, were available. So anyway, I'm auditioning, I'm booking things. They're calling me in by name on Commercial Row because I had a good commercial look. And it was me and this woman, Angela, the two of us. If she's a little bit shorter than me, sometimes she looked better as the wife than I did because I might be too tall to pair up with the husband. But we had a similar look. We saw each other at all the auditions and we would wish each other luck, I mean, each of us wanted to get it, but if I didn't get it, at least she got it. So a year goes by and I'm standing in the Grapevine. This is north of LA. And I just finished filming day one, or my part of a Chevy OnStar commercial. And so I'm just up the hill, they're filming it down below. I'm standing in front of my trailer. I have my own trailer, a whole trailer to myself with my name on the door and a star. Like I'm feeling like I'm really starting to make some progress here. And I'm in my street clothes because I'd shot my part. And the guy goes, "Hey, you need to be careful because there are snakes in this grass." And he said, "You're wearing your Birkenstock sandals." And I looked down at my feet, looked up, and had a deja vu moment back to the session. In the session, when the metaphor showed the field with the prairie grass and the trees and the rolling hills, the only difference was those trees did not have apples. I was living the acting gigs. They were not literally apples. And so it was in that moment that I said, I'm going to study past life regression and I'm going to go back to Wilmington and I'm going to do this. And this is after like 10 years of pursuing this other career and studying and doing plays and, everything. I threw myself into it. And I'm like, okay, I now know what I'm going to be doing. So I went out for one thing and came back for another. And my husband, he did come out when it was time to come home. I was out there for a couple of years, but I knew then that this was going to be my calling. And we're driving down the highway, long stretch of desert, nothing on either side. And he's like, "Hey, do you think you might you might go back and get another legal job when you get back to Wilmington? Have you thought about what you're going to do?" And I said, "Oh no, I'm going to be a past life regressionist." And he went, "What?" And he almost drove off the road. And he was quiet. Like he just took a deep breath and he was quiet for a very long time. And then he said, "Well, who's going to come to you for that?" And I said, "If you build it, they will come," like Field of Dreams, because he loved that movie. And so, but I did too. I love that movie. So anyway, he goes, "Okay, if that's what you need to do, we'll do it." Right. And so we'd moved to Wilmington to be by the studios. He had just gotten his practice started. He didn't want to keep moving around because being a male too, it takes a little bit more to get started. And that's what he told me. He said, "I was just worried after I had success and people come from all over the world to my center for sessions. Now it's online, so we do it online." But he was like, "I just didn't want you to, I didn't know who would do that." I said, "Well, I found somebody to go to." And he goes, "You," and then he goes, "And your father." So it kind of goes back to my dad. And as my mother would put it, it's your father's fault. But I do have his genes. I have her faith in a higher power, and I have my father's interest in extraterrestrials, past life regression, all the things that she didn't want him to influence me with, even though I didn't want to listen to him when he wanted to talk about it, and he would stay up late and listen to George Norrie. I still got the genes, and it goes back down my family line. In fact, one of my guides is my grandmother, who passed before I was ever born, and she's Native American, and she helps me with this work too. So that's kind of the long version, but I had this journey, and it's not a straight path, and that's the thing. But I was clearing up so much stuff, and then things I learned. I left the legal job because I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it for myself. Like, I'm going to be my own administrative person, administrative assistant. You know, I'm just going to invest and have faith in myself. So. Oh, Carol, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I wanted to also mention during the bio that you trained with Roger Woolger, besides Michael Newton, also Brian Weiss. So I knew Roger. I also trained with Brian Weiss. I wanted to train with Leo Bolduc, but he retired just when I was at a place where I could do that. So tell us a little bit about your experience with Roger, because what I liked about his work and the deep memory process, it's different than traditional regression work.
Yes. So Roger, I took several courses with Roger. I was on the track with Roger, and I didn't even know who Michael Newton was. And I had this, I was like scheduled to take the next course with Roger down in the Caribbean. And one of my friends said, Bryn, you need to study with Michael Newton because he's going to retire. I said, I don't know who that is. I knew Brian Weiss was, but I hadn't studied with him yet. And they said, well, you need to. And so, like many things with my hypnosis training, my friends and I in the field would make plans to take the next course, people I'd met in class, and then it would be time to take the class, and I'm the only one in the class from that group that said we were going to carry forward. And then I'd meet with a new group, I guess you call it soul group, meet with a little, or classroom soul group, meet up with a new group, and then we're on to the next thing. And so when I read Michael Newton's book so that I could take his class, I couldn't put it down. I was like, this is my calling. So I still took the course with Roger, and they knew each other, Michael and Roger. And Roger said, Bryn, Michael Newton I think he's got it the closest to, what is out there. Now, Roger worked more with sense memories that are held in the body, and how your body's DNA will carry memories, and, you can access past lives. So it was amazing. Well, okay. So Carol, if I'm going too long, you just stop me, but I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah. I love it.
Going to that course in the Caribbean, it was a freak ice storm in Charlotte. Like, I think it was like May. It was crazy. So I flew from here. I did my hop over in Charlotte. I was going to switch planes and get down there, and class was going to be the next day, and they wouldn't let us fly out because the ice on the planes. So I accidentally, this is when they started, first time, the airports were starting to shut down. You need to take your shoes off and put on the conveyor belt and your belt. Okay. I accidentally left the gate. If I'd stayed in the gate, I could have gotten on another flight possibly, but I left the gate. So I had to go all the way out and come back and then go through the security all over again with these new guidelines. And I just thought, I feel like I'm being sent to the gas chamber. But why this came into my mind, I don't know. So I'm taking my stuff off again, putting it in the tray, doing the thing, and I'm having trouble breathing. I'm smelling like this gassy smell. So I'm having all these sense memories. And I was able to call and let somebody know at the house that I wasn't going to be able to get there. So they knew I was not going to be there till the next day. Well, I ended up missing the first day of the training, not knowing that another person from Arizona, he was missing the training. So I'm having all these sensations. It was interesting. And I get there and they said, Bryn, we held the training for you and the other person because we just decided we would do a little something like a group regression. So they did a group regression and went back to the Holocaust. They put me in and did the sense memory off the body. And I was like a young girl with the other people being pushed through into the gas chambers. And I'm picking up all the memories. That's what I had experienced the day before when they were doing the thing. And then I'm trying to fly and get there. And the person out of Arizona, he was experiencing the same kinds of things. So it was wild and it was energetic and it was the energy bubble. And that's probably why I got confused and left the gate. And then I had to go back all the way through everything because I was just swept up in this wave of energy that was coming through. Now with Roger, okay, let's just say you're clearing something from a past life and you are being hung, for being a horse thief. Well, you had a little box of tools in your office as the hypnotherapist, and you would pull out a piece of rope or something and put it over their neck because their senses are heightened. And so when they're like, I'm being hung, you help them out a little bit by just putting gentle pressure on the neck, which feels even more intense when they're under hypnosis, and so we would have sometimes clients were thrashing around the office. Patricia, Roger's assistant, did a session with me where I was a slave from the plantation and I had to leave the plantation because this was at one of the other trainings. I had to leave the plantation because I was light-skinned. My husband was jet black and he worked outside, and my husband now was my husband then. And the fair, redheaded, pale-skinned master of the plantation had his way with me because he liked me. And so when I got pregnant, we didn't know what color the baby was going to be, and then the secret would be out. And so I learned a lot about the emotions and what it's like to be on that side of things. And then the mistress of the plantation, she gave us money, told us to leave, and we made it up to Virginia on a dark dirt road, the moon shining through the trees. And then the master had sent his men after us because he didn't know. He just knew we escaped. And they caught us and they held I'm just going to let you know, it's very gory, but they held my husband, the big burly, outdoorsy slave that worked on the plantation. They held him back, took 2 men to hold him back, and they gutted me as the pregnant woman. They gutted me, took the baby, killed the baby, and it killed me and made him watch, and then took him back to the plantation, to punish him. So all of that off of sense memories that were coming up in class. And, poor Patricia, she had this seat cushion with the props and she's trying to, push and push like the offending person. And she's like telling me to push back, and I kicked her across the room, and so, but I got it out and I cleared whatever that was. And so that's the part that made me kind of get away from Roger's work, because I thought in my office, what somebody, there were lots of screams, there's kicking, there's movement. It's more physical than the past life regressions that I do with, in my work. But that was kind of like one thing I was struggling with. And Roger even said, there have been a couple of times that the police have come, and Roger with his British accent, you just have to go to the door and address their concerns and then get back in there because you got to finish up with your client, So very different style, but your body holds memories. The memories of everything are in your genes. The memories are in your soul. So I can access the body memories in my SESR work, which we'll talk about SESR, but in that soul expression spiritual regression, I can access those memories in another way and work with them, if it's something that's holding the client back.
Perfect segue. That was my next question that I forgot to mention. Soul Expression Spiritual Regression, SESR. And so tell us more about that.
Well, I went on to study with Michael. After I'd studied with Michael, went to Roger. Roger said, Bryn, you should teach. I said, what would I teach? I mean, I know sometimes I'm learning what my next step is as someone is asking me about it, right? And he said, definitely go with Michael if that's what you're feeling drawn to. So I worked with Michael to help start the Newton Institute. I was a board member. I was a lead trainer. I was membership director. So I worked with the people, I worked with the reviews, but my sessions started popping into something a little different right from the beginning. And I still would try to bring it back and do the traditional LBL the way we were taught, but my sessions kept going beyond that, and always. And it was because of my energy and the client's energy and what we were ready to work with. So I developed over time, which I write about in the Limitless Soul, I developed SESR, Soul Expression Spiritual Regression. So it's where Michael Newton's work is between lives, and it takes you to all the places in the between, and you can explore, and you do learn about your life purpose, and you can learn about soul groups. Mine is soul expression. It is a magnification of your soul in your physical body. It is a current life assessment now, so that you don't have to die, come back, learn to read, walk, talk, read, write, start all over again. You get a current life assessment, and you also learn about your life purpose. You learn about, it can change the course of your current life and redirect you so that you have a clear understanding of who you truly are. And that is the point of it. So I cut out some of the other stuff that clients love to do, right? To do things that I felt were, well, this is my path, and this is what I'm meant to bring in. And so this is a way for me to carry clients forward more quickly and more directly through their challenges in current life so they can clear things up. You still may have to live another incarnation or two to work things out, but guides will come in and explain that. They may say, this client is at a point now that the rest of their life is like free to do, like free will to do what they want because they've achieved what was meant for this lifetime. And then sometimes they'll say, another lifetime is going to be needed, but this is accelerating things. So that's what's in the acronym SESR stands for assessment.
Oh, that is awesome. I really like that concept. And, I feel like we're all synergizing what we're learning and creating our own modalities. And so I love the way that you've done that with your work.
Well, it's about taking the work forward, and I'm helping clients to find and follow their soul's guidance. So once we can line that up, they can do these things for themselves. I mean, yes, we're doing it in a session, and you can't just run to your hypnotherapist every couple of weeks, that's not very practical. And I want to teach people to be empowered in themselves. I want them to own their own power so they can sync up and they can connect. And yes, we might do a session. They might read something in my book. My book has 18 case studies. And then at the end of each chapter, we have some exercises that the client can do. So those are some things too, because I know that everybody is not going to be able to come in to see me. I mean, I can only see so many people, but reading the book helps, start that process as well. So it's just a way to help you connect and find and follow that soul's guidance.
I think you're reading my mind. My next thing on my list was about the exercises at the end of each chapter. So I really appreciate that you did that. I agree with you 100%. The more that we can empower our clients, how wonderful that is. And
Well,
that's
that was
really,
supposed to be my next book, but my publisher, Llewellyn, they asked me if I would combine the two.
oh,
So it just kind of came about, and it just worked out that I had enough exercises to work out with, actually had a couple of extras. So to work with the case studies, and then they were related to one another. So sometimes, so I'm doing a repatterning with clients. Reading the book helps to repattern. It's helping you to repattern yourself. If you're
yeah,
coming in for a session, that's what we're doing, is repatterning, changing those habits, changing the focus. And um, whether you're working with me or on your own with a book or a meditation tape, you're still doing the work, right? So it's just helping you to sync up and clear out some of the chatter. It's like that little 4-year-old me. I knew. I was very clear back then. And then as I got older, all these influences came in to cloud my clarity, because people didn't want to talk about what I wanted answers to, or they didn't have the answer that I was looking for. So they would kind of sidestep the question or just kind of laugh it off or make it like you know, I was asking, like I had two heads or something, you know, and, I now, a lot of the people that I went to high school with are interested in these things, but I was always interested in them. I just didn't have those people to hang out with that I could talk to about it. 'Cause,
wow. Well, I want to let anybody else who has a question. I've got a bunch more questions about digging into some of the characters in the book, but if anyone else has a question about the book or any of the things that we've talked about so far, if you'll just raise your hand so I know who you are, and I'm open the floor for other questions. Yeah, Jim. You're mute. There you go. You're still on mute. There
Am
you
I?
go.
No, no, all right. I know in talking with you, Carol, before that when you do your work of your work on past life regression, that being a medium, that you yourself kind of go along with the person in their process. And I'm wondering, Bryn, whether you do the same type of thing in your work.
The way it works for me, is I will get questions that'll pop into my mind.
Okay.
And if I don't ask that question, it gets louder and like somebody's poking me. And I'm like, enough already. And I'll ask it, and the client will go, I was just thinking about that. Oh, I forgot to tell you about that. So I have learned to trust that over time. I do know that I feel it. I feel the guide. I have each level of training that I've taken. My guides have kind of changed in and out. And I have a guide that comes in when I'm about to start the session, and I feel them engage. And then I know we need to start. Like if we're doing pre-talk and we're talking about things.
Okay.
So that is a really great comment, because a lot of my students are intuitive. They're mediums, they're intuitive, they're psychic, depending on the terminology. And they don't want to put themselves out there and put up a shingle with that. But hypnotherapy offers them the opportunity to do this work and gives them tools to work with the clients. So excuse me just for a sec. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So it offer you will find that a lot of hypnotherapists are intuitive, psychic, or have other gifts that they use in the sessions.
Right.
And then that leads me to okay. What's happening right? So right now, all this energy in the room, what is happening is all of us are on this call, but we also have our teams. So each of us has a soul that's sitting up there. And then along with their soul, we have our whole spiritual team that helps us when we're here. So we've got all of them having like a gathering and communicating while we're here, along with anybody else, any other visitors that have been invited to come and join us in the book club tonight. So it's like, it could be a whole like football stadium of beings there tuning in.
It's not your ordinary book club for any stretch of the imagination, is it?
No.
I love that. Yeah, I it's funny when you had the thing with your throat, I thought, okay, who is trying to speak through you? It really felt like someone was trying to, weigh in.
Yes.
Yeah. Great question. Any other questions, Jim? Okay. Thank you so
Well,
much.
Carol, I want to speak to how we process information.
Yes.
Because you can be audio, visual, kinesthetic. So clients might, in a session, they might see a scene in a past life. That's most common because the books read that way. The research in previous years was done that way, but a lot of men were hypnotherapists in the past, and they tend to be more visual. And we're finding now, well, certainly with my classes, clients are not just visual, they're auditory, they're kinesthetic, which means they feel. So they might not see anything, but they feel what's happening in the session in great detail. They can give you great detail and description. So when you're reading my book, some of those clients were not seeing anything, but I've got, like text, pages and pages of text. So they're getting the information, they're just not seeing it. And then some are seeing it and can give detail that way. And then I had a client that she was crossing over into the spirit realm and she's doing fine. And then she like clamped down on the energy and she's like, oh. And I said, what's happening? She goes, nothing. She was getting so frustrated with herself. And I said, well, nothing is really something. Tell me more about that. And she's like, well, there's this smell that's like this pastry smell. And it's, well, take a deep breath, relax, and let's follow that and see where it leads. And so the smell just kind of wafted through time and space and then dropped her into a little Swiss village. And then she saw cobblestone streets. She saw that she was a male and he's going down the cobblestone streets into this building. He talks to the woman behind the counter, and then he goes over there and sits down with all the men. They're having a town meeting about what to do because all the young men have gone off to war. This is 1758 in the Swiss Alps, and he's a leader in town, and he's trying to find out, how they're going to manage the town because all the young men are away. All of that off of a smell. She was ready to quit. I wouldn't let her quit. That took 35 minutes of just floating and drifting. I was looking at the clock. She doesn't have a clock. She's in timelessness. And then everything started to fill in. And she was coming to me because she worked for, her parents had a family business. And she was of an age that now she was in her 40s. They wanted to retire and they wanted her to take over so they could retire. And she didn't want to do that. She wanted to do something more spiritual. So she was hiding out here at the beach house and not liking that she was doing that either. She'd been here quite a few years, I believe. So the guides came in and talked to her and said things like, you know, you won't be able to get jobs, you and your siblings, making what y'all make at the company that you're with, doing the same jobs. And it was like a building supply type company. They said, you do realize that you're helping clients build their first home or their dream home. The doors, the nuts, the bolts that you provide for them are helping them with the place they're going to live every single day. What could be more spiritual than that? But if you don't want to do it, it's your choice.
That's right.
But if you do this, your siblings will look up to you and follow you. They will listen. And then the guide said, you know, that's only you're only a couple of hours from the beach. You could have a meeting at the beach, but you could have a meeting and get to the beach within a couple of hours in the same day. And remember, you're going to be the boss. So you could take a week off when you want to take a week off. Like, they had to point out how great this would be. And then they said, what about the employees that have been with your parents, but they're not ready to retire? So, you know, that's how a session can go, how they will present the information in story form, present the pros and cons, agree with the client, you know, kind of went down her list of all the things she didn't want to do, and then show her how doing them could actually be spiritual and in line with everything she wanted in life. So she found out she was on the right track.
Wonderful.
She had a background in finance, and she thought that was kind of boring, you know?
Yeah, you know, these misconceptions people have about what is spiritual, and I just, and what is our creative. Yeah, I feel like we're breaking the glass ceiling, I guess they say. I think
Yes.
John Koenig had a question. Do you still have a question, John? Where'd he go?
I do. Can you hear me?
Wait a minute, I can't find you.
I can hear you, but I don't see you.
I don't know why you can't see me. I see that problem. Oh, there
Oh,
I
there
am.
you are.
I wasn't going to ask anything, but you talked about a question gets louder and louder and louder. And you talked about this work that you do, which you've created, reviewing your life and resolving your issues and not having to come back again. And that's kind of a bold statement. And what's next? And why not come back? And if you can talk about that a little bit, I appreciate hearing about that.
That's a great question, because clients come in expecting that if they just can do a past life session, their guides are going to tell them this is their last incarnation and they don't have to come back again, right? Now, sometimes guides will say this is your last incarnation, but most times the people they're saying that to are not expecting to hear that. And then the clients that are expecting, oh yeah, I'm done. I'm done with Earth. The guides laugh and they're like, no, you're going to be back again. You're going to be back a few more times. However, there are many helper souls who did not have to come back. They had finished their karma. They had finished their incarnations. Earth is a planet of emotions. It's the emotional planet. That is why we come here. And so we get here and it's like, oh, I don't want to feel anything. Can we just like go up there and be on a cloud as I live out the rest of this life? And it's like, no, you have to be in the body and experience it to truly appreciate it. And the souls that came in to help, that, you know, they could have in essence continued on to be guides. They are guides actually, and moving up those ranks or moving to other planets. They came back to be living guides on this planet to help because they can. And there's still other karma. There's certainly other things that they can work on if they choose a family to incarnate into, a body that will have certain challenges. They choose a life that's going to give them the challenges they need to develop skills that are going to keep them engaged to help others around them. So, so there's not one answer to that. There's not one blanket statement that I can say everybody, fits this mold in this answer, but those are some of the different answers that clients will get through this work. I keep thinking, like, there's this person that I know who had many health challenges as a young boy. They said he wouldn't live, and he was confined to a wheelchair. He had to be, taken care of and fed. He had that young man had so many surgeries. It's unbelievable.
Tough life.
And he has outlived his cousins. I guess he's 55. No, I guess he's about 64 now. He's outlived everybody, right? Even his caretakers. But the reason I'm thinking of this is because him being in that body required everyone around him to help. So being the advanced soul, although I never did a session with him, I believe that he was. And he was challenging and he was difficult. He didn't have a filter, the things that would come out of his mouth. Sometimes he would have abusive fits and kind of hit at some of the older people that were taking care of him. But being that soul that he was, allowed him to allow others to take care of him, and it helped others to have compassion. So that's an example of an advanced soul. Now, I don't know if he's going to incarnate again or not, but I do see the dynamics of that, and how by him being the way he was, opened up something in others and allowed them to be, to choose to be compassionate or to choose to be angry at him. I mean, there were different responses to him. And if you don't incarnate on this planet, John, you might go to a planet that's a water world, or a planet where we don't have bodies. We kind of float around. There are planets that are like Earth and we die, and then we're just over there. But here, we're back home, right? But here, when we die, we go through this whole process and we release the physical body. When someone dies before us, we go through the grief and that we're cut off from them in a way that we're not cut off on the other planets. But we are moving into a place where that is becoming less and less. Like, we are moving to a place on Earth that souls, yes, they're being cut off, but they're able to reconnect to their loved ones who have passed, to clear the grieving and to keep that channel open, the same way you do with your guides, or, your soul, or your spiritual team. So, yeah, Earth is going through it's going through a big shakeup. Things are changing, but we are improving, and more light is coming in. It's been a challenging time, but these are some of the things they talk about with future lives, and hopefully in my lifetime, but it's like the 60s revolution, but we're moving into this new energy, and it's shifting everything. And then with each generation that leaves, a whole thought pattern that circles the Earth lifts. And like so now I look to the younger generation and I think, what does that mean, with the processes and the thinking? The 60s shook things up, the 70s, now the kids that were born in the 80s and 90s are adults. What is that energy shifting into? But I mean that in a positive, right?
That's a very good answer.
A lot of those kids are like, I am just not going to be tied down to the traditional job or a house and a mortgage. I want to live my life. I want to go experience some things before I have all those things. And, that is just a new way of thinking, in a larger group of people than what, we were taught when we were younger. You go to school, you get a good job, you get married, you have children. I did some of those things.
Well, as somebody older than a lot here in the 60s, that was the vision. We would create a new world, a different type of world. I just never did this work for the idea of not coming back anymore. You know, it's uncomfortable here sometimes, but I don't mind being here in Earth Spirit School. But
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. That was a great question.
Great question. Thank you, John. So I want to ask a question about some of the characters in the book. There's if I mispronounce her name, you can correct me. Jarishma, Jharisam, Jarishma. See, I know I'm not pronouncing it right.
Which chapter?
Page 49. I don't know what the chapter is, but it's page 49.
Okay.
In her story, you talk about several tiers within soul groups. And I thought that was something I haven't heard too many people talk about.
Oh, and let me just say, when I wrote the book, I changed the names to protect the innocent.
Yeah, I figured that.
So sometimes I know the story, but not the name. So yes, Jarish.
I love what she
Jarishma.
said. Choosing the life of a monk was about how to take the anger and have the ultimate challenge of self-contemplation. People can take anger many, many ways and carry it through many, many lives. It can be a good force or a negative force. That was, as someone who suppressed my anger for so many years, when it finally came up, it was such a revelation to honor it. And but like I said, I was really keen to know more about the tiers within soul groups. And she was one of the examples that you had given for that.
Yes. So this is one of my favorite stories. And this is a man whose family, his younger brother is killed in an accident, and his mother never gets over the grief. He's angry at God, and his father dies. So he's a young man, and all of a sudden, I think he might have even been a teenager, and all of a sudden, he doesn't have a family, and he's mad at God. So he just decides to join the monastery so he can learn more about that, right? So when he leaves the monastery, you have to find your useful purpose. So he tries a few things and decides he's good with the cooking. So he will go to town and buy the ingredients. And on the way to town, when he's coming back, he'll sit under this tree and kind of ruminate on all the things that he's angry at God about, right? He kind of lets God know all the stuff he's mad about. But over the course of his life, living in that monastery and working things out, he begins to find a peace within himself. So then he, at the end of the story, I believe he moves to another role at a different church. I don't think it's a monastery then. He's more like, I can't think of the term, but he's like one of the elders in a church. So soul groups, the tiers would be like his initial family, and then the other brothers that were monks at the monastery that kind of, ran everything. And then there would be one or two that he was closer with that were, his buddies that he was more closely connected to, the one that he cooked in the kitchen with, and they would joke around with each other. So I would say that was his core soul group. Even though his family is important, they would be like a connected soul group. And then, and they were important, but they didn't stay long. And then another group would be later on in life when he was older and he moved to the church and took on that role with the congregation. And, so it's like there are these groups, and then you have these other groups that are all working together on having similar paths or similar goals. But the core group is the one you incarnate with more, over and over again. And you still may incarnate with some of the others in other lifetimes. It's just that, if a soul group has, let's say roughly 8 or 10 people in it, sometimes less, think about your life right now. You know way more than that. You know thousands of people, many, many people, right? So how does that work? Well, they would be like rings of a circle that go out, from the core, and then the influences. Because I think about like me, okay, me and my family, and then my friends, and then the other hypnotherapists that I trained with, and then my clients, and then my students. And then my students are going out and taking that work. So it's kind of expanding out and out and out in the various groups. So I know a lot of people, but my core soul group is much smaller. And I didn't know all of them until I started getting into this work. And then I had some explanation as to who some of the people were in my life, and finding out how advanced some of the people are in your life that you're like, really?
Yeah,
That's
even
the
if you're
advanced
a
one?
one-lifer and you start looking at the relationships that you have with the concentric rings of people that you have, but now to look at it from a soul perspective, that's what I'm hearing you're saying is, what are the agreements between each one of those sets of circles of people? I love that way of looking at it.
And then there are other players that they're not part of your soul group, but when someone comes in and betrays you, like a business partner, betrays you, takes your business ideas, does something with it, and then you're left to pick up the pieces and start over again and continue forward. And then you have that success and you're standing there and you're in a really good place. This would happen in a session. You can go back and see how that person that hurt you so deeply and took so much actually helped you, because now you're over here. Like you would have still been on that same track if they hadn't done what they did, and you wouldn't have grown and moved into the next phase of what you're able to do. So that's what happens in a session, and that's what's so amazing. It makes you, it puts things in a way that you can find peace with it. I mean, when it's happening, clients are not, if they're going through a divorce and their spouse cheated, there's going to be some emotion about that. But down the road, when they find their true soulmate that really was supportive and compassionate and understood them, and unconditional love that they never had with the other partner, then in session, often they will, thank the person who hurt them and say, thank you for that, because if you hadn't done that, we would still be together and I was miserable, So soul groups and then companion groups, all helping each other if you can see past the pain.
Exactly. It's sort of like actors in a play, I've often seen the soul conversations with soul groups and kind of and if you can imagine people in a coffee shop kidding around and saying, okay, do you want to play the villain this time? And
Yes.
I get to be the hero, and so we're actors in a play for one another, to help us evolve. I think we're here to help us evolve. So
remember the time I killed you?
yeah.
Remember the time you were so mad that, I stole your boyfriend,
Exactly. I do remember that.
I do remember, and I'm still mad about it.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about Juniper. Juniper, you talk about how there's on page 117. So if you don't to connect with her from the real life story. But what I wanted to ask you about was you talk about rehab for injured entities. I love that. So people don't realize how much healing work goes on the other side. We're not just twiddling our thumbs or playing a harp or what have you. And so tell us a little bit about what happens to help the injured entities.
Okay, so Juniper, not her real name, is a very advanced soul, and I found this out when we were going back, and she's gone through the death in a past life. She's gone back home, and she stepped into the spirit realm. They took her through this little thing. They kind of cleaned her off. Her assistant was standing there waiting for her, hands her her white lab coat, hands her her clipboard, fills her in on everything that happened while she was incarnating on Earth, and takes her down the hallway to where the spiritual rehab for all the injured souls are. And so these are the souls that have done things during their incarnation that they're not ready to acclimate and join the population yet. Their energy is misaligned. Often, like, it's going to come up, so I might as well say it, but the Hitlers of the world and the ones that took things to an extreme and really tortured people that way, when they're in a soul state, they see that they took things too far, further than was meant to happen. But you have free will when you get here, and sometimes the soul gets in the body, it gets disconnected from spirit. Ego, greed, take it to an extreme. I mean, way extreme. So those souls go to a place like this, and then there are souls like Juniper that are soul doctors. So their job is to work with those souls and help them acclimate back into society, or they go to another place and they don't acclimate back in. So what's interesting about her is her job in the spirit world is to study humans. And so she comes to Earth like for a vacation, because her job is so intense when it's back there. Most souls are like, I can't wait to get back. Let me get back to the spirit world. It's so bad here on Earth. And she's like, no, that's nothing compared to what I deal with there all the time. But she studies them. She's compassionate. Even as a person, she deals with some of the very troubled souls here. And, souls that a lot of people would just pass by or not give a second thought to. She really, really cares. And then she takes that information and that learning and she applies it when she goes back.
I love that story. That was one of my favorites in the book. And another favorite is this is coming up a lot more, I feel like, the one about Elsa and Elsa, John, and Natalie, the parallel lives.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you seeing that more in your work, that people are aware of experiencing parallel lives?
I do see that from time to time. And sometimes it's not as clear when we're in session. And it's not as clear because they're getting information about a couple of different things and they're trying to make sense of it. But I started to notice when that would happen. So John and Elsa and Natalie, all right, so Elsa and Natalie are twins. And then their friend John incarnates with them a lot. And so Elsa has had several past lives, and where she uses sign language. So some of these I talk about in that chapter. So she's a teacher for a deaf school.
Mhm.
She signs to children hiding in her attic in Poland during World War I, so the soldiers outside can't hear them. There's another lifetime where she is a cave woman and they communicate through sign language using their hands and not words. And the three of them usually incarnate together. This time, so they're not always twins. This is the first time that they incarnated at the same age, at the same time. Often they're like mother-daughter, or they've been sisters. They've been other things, other relationships, but this is the first time they incarnated as the same age. What's interesting is, even though they're twins, there's the one that tends to mother the other a little bit, that in the past lives was the mother. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, and I believe that one, it's been a little while since I wrote the book, but I believe that's the one that a new guide appeared for Elsa. So
Yeah.
sometimes in the review process, I mean, it'll be like a ceremony. When they're reviewing the past life, or they're moving in the between, and the council come through, the Soul Advisory Council, and a member may stand up and like do like some type of grand gesture and leave, and another one come in, or another one may just come in, right? And this is where the guides are, there's a new guide that comes in for that client. I've had this happen many, many times, where new guides have come in and then they explain what they help that client with and why they're here. These are the skills that she has, and I'm helping her to develop them. Or it could be anything that a guide is helping with.
Yeah. I love too how I can't remember if it's before the exercises or where you said this, but the one of the takeaways that you've gotten out of this work is how when we approach life from our soul's perspective, and the way I word it is, when we live consciously, then I believe we'll transition consciously, we'll be reborn consciously. But you call it soul-minded approach to living. That's really beautiful. That kind of says it in a nutshell, doesn't it?
Thank you. That's what I mean. Like, all the things we've been talking about here, if you can look at that when you're in the grocery store, or when you're at the post office,
Yeah.
outside of when you're in session, when you can look at people in a different way, then it shifts you. Like at the grocery store, they're checking people out. People are coming through the line. People are complaining. They've been there all day. Their feet are tired and they're smiling, or they're trying to bag your groceries or ring you out. And if somebody ahead of me has given that person a really hard time, I'm going to take some extra time and just smile and thank them for being here, or just something to lighten the moment, because that's going to make them laugh. And then they're going to go home to their children or to their partner, and they're going to be in a better mood. It's going to spread all the way out. So that, I could complain that they're moving too slow. I want to get out of there too. But me making them feel bad and putting pressure on them and being negative towards them is only going to make them go slower and make more mistakes ringing out my groceries. And if I did that, I would feel bad. I would walk away feeling bad, and they're going to feel bad. And it may be a while before they can shake that off. So the soul-minded approach is being aware that people are in your life for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
The soul-minded approach is having more faith in the bigger plan that's here for us, so that you can live out the remainder of your life with more peace. I mean, we all get stressed. Oh my gosh. Auditioning, I was a nervous wreck, and then I got really good at it, right? I walked into an audition one day And nobody told me until I was 3 feet away from Billy Crystal that he was directing this film. And so that was the moment that everything changed for me, because I went in there and Billy Crystal has these little short khaki shorts with these little tan hairy legs. And then the 2 suits, we call them suits, sitting on each side of him, whispering about this production. And he's like, Bryn, we'd like you to do this. And and I just did what he asked me to do. Usually you're out of the room in 5 minutes. If you're lucky for an audition, you're there for 10 minutes. Well, I was there for about a half an hour, and he just kept throwing me the ball, and I would grab it and then throw it back. And he'd say, do this, do that. I was just in the moment. I did not have time to think. When I walked out of there, everything I just said hit me. And I went, oh my gosh, that was Billy Crystal. And I wasn't even nervous. Like, that was the biggest director that I just auditioned for. And I just seen him on the comedy, was it Live Aid that he and Whoopi Goldberg did, and Robin Williams. So, and I'd seen Whoopi Goldberg on set right over there in the parking lot. And she was waiting for this car to come get her. And I wanted to run up to her and go, Whoopi, I just love you. But I didn't. I was so cool about it. So here I am in front of the other one. Anyway, it was just really interesting to me, because that was the moment that I was in the moment. That was the moment I realized I no longer had stage fright from all those times that I did have stage fright. And from then on, it wasn't even an issue.
Wow.
And yeah, just this is before, see, I live a lot of things, and then in session, I learn what they meant. I have things happen to me, and then it gets explained. And then once it's explained, my brain breaks things apart, puts it into a template, puts it into a pattern, and then I teach it to my students. So, having that deeper understanding of things and connections helps me just to return to that place of soul connection.
Yeah.
Because my soul is sitting, standing, floating. My soul is there with my whole spiritual team. They lined up all of this for me that I'm doing right now. Myself right now actually came back and visited my younger self as a teenager and told her that I would be doing some of these things, and it scared me to death. It scared me to death. And so I resisted and I went the other way, but I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know it meant this. If I trusted it, I could have relaxed a little more along the way. But, you can roll into the next thing that's there for you more smoothly with confidence, and have better relationships with the people around you, and open up, open connections. Maybe you have more loving relationships in your life because you see the soul in them reflecting back to you. It makes you more open, so others want to be around you, versus people that don't want to be around you because you're so closed off and not much fun to be around.
Yeah. I love that. I love what you were talking about, how you're learning things from the sessions that you're facilitating that take you to the next level also. To me, it's just so win-win, because now you can channel that to the next person and the students that you teach and in your books. And so that's really wonderful.
And it's about trusting.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I know what it's like to not trust, but now I've learned to trust. Because even the stuff with the cameras and the lights and everything, when we were just starting, it's like I've just learned to relax. And like you were saying, it's the energy coming in. Or, you don't get the audition that you thought you were, you just knew you had it. You did everything right, and you didn't get it. And then the one you did everything wrong, and they loved you for it, So it's like what's meant to be yours, you can't not get.
Right.
So when you can trust the divine plan, then your mind and your body that have that partnership with your soul can work together instead of against each other, you know?
So speaking of divine plan, what's on the menu next for you?
For me,
Uh-huh.
I've been working on the next book, and I
Do you have a
have
working title yet?
no. Well, it's changed a little bit. There's the book I'm actually working on a couple of books. I thought I was doing one, but they surprised me and showed me how it was actually a couple of books. And then I've got a couple of documentaries that I'm working with, and I can't say anything yet, but I'm hoping that they'll be out next year in 2025. And you know, I'm still teaching. I actually have a course coming up in 2 weeks. And so I do session work, but I've turned over some of that to my students, and I'm teaching more, you know, and I have students on every continent except for Antarctica. One of my
Awesome.
students was saying she was actually going to be visiting there. I forgot why. I think it's something to do with her boyfriend.
So you can count that
I
continent
know.
too.
I said, well, if you do a session there, we might be able to count that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell everybody how to get in touch with you. The name of your website.
Oh, it's www.brynblankinship.com, BrynBlankinship.com.
Awesome.
And if
And
you go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, there's a link that you can do a little mini de-stress. It's like a 15-minute, it's not a past life, it's a current life, but it's meant to like de-stress mental clutter. So, you know, there's a little link to that if you want to try it out. And
great.
thank you to everybody. Thank you to Carol for having me on the show, and for reading my book, for taking the time to do that. And I really appreciate that.
You know, I love to read, and so this is my favorite topic, and so it was a natural segue. We didn't have the Reincarnation Book Club for the first few symposiums, and it started last year because a couple of authors donated books to as door prizes. And
Oh,
they weren't even speakers. They heard about it, they donated the books. And so I said, well, we've got to work in a way to talk about their book too. So that's how we started with the Reincarnation Book Club. And I just really love this because it's different from regular book clubs where, you know, you come from all different areas. If the people here have an interest in reincarnation, they're all levels of interest, but there's definitely an interest in reincarnation. And so it's wonderful to have a safe, sacred space to be able to talk about these things where other areas people might think you're crazy. And we want to just say, hey, join our club.
well, guides have said where we're from, they're the crazy one.
Yeah, you know, and that's a good point because I do not like the word paranormal, because I feel like what people call paranormal is the real normal. And all that other stuff is what's, you know, beyond the normal. So
Yes.
I want to ask one last question before we wind up, and that is, what thought you would like to leave us with as your parting words for today's event?
I always like to end with, you are here by design, on purpose, for a purpose. All souls are following their divine plan, and you are here for a reason. So even if someone comes in for a moment, long enough to father or bring a child into the world, and then they leave, that was their purpose, to bring them forward, right? Even if someone is only here momentarily, or they're here for a long, long time. That is, they come in, they do what they need to do, and when it's time to go, they go. And that's why some people live short lives and some people live long, even though we expect, in our minds, we think we're going to, that you're supposed to live to be old and older. But that's not always the case, because sometimes the young ones get in, do what they need to do, and they're gone. So, yeah.
Oh, that is a beautiful thought. And I can't thank you enough. I'm going to bring everybody in a gallery view so we can all say thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful conversation. These are some of the questions that we haven't asked before. And so it's great to have the conversation around them. So thank you so much.